A Democrat is challenging Joe Biden in the Democratic primary. Representative Dean Phillips from Minnesota announced his candidacy for president over the weekend, and we got to chat with him just hours after that announcement dropped. I hope you guys enjoy the interview. Representative Phillips, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
All right, so I just want to jump right in. I think the obvious question here is, why are you doing this? We have a Democratic president in office. What's behind this campaign that you're launching today?
Yeah, we have a wonderful Democratic president in office, a man I admire, a man whose policies I voted for and helped market as a member of the House leadership team. But we also have a Democrat in office who is looking like he's going to lose to Donald Trump. And that's my mission. It was my mission in 2016 when I promised my daughters that I would do something. I ran for Congress. It was my mission after January 6th, being trapped in the House chamber because of the insurrection he inspired. And now it's my mission once again to ensure that he does not return to the White House. And it somehow has made me unpopular amongst Democrats because I happen to be the only one saying the quiet part out loud, which is all the data indicates that President Biden is going to lose to Donald Trump. It's true across the country. It's true in the battleground states. The most recent approval numbers are the lowest he's had in his presidency, some of the lowest in presidential history. And it's pretty clear. We need choices. Democrats should be free to make a choice. They should have options. That's what democracy with a small d is. And that's why I'm doing this. Not out of spite, not in opposition to President Biden, but I'm running for the future because we need it now.
So I want to talk about the Dean Phillips versus President Biden primary. What are the differences between you two that voters should know about? I mean, like you said, you've been very supportive of his agenda. This is not meant to be a big oppositional, uprising against the president. So why should voters pick you over him?
Well, it is not going to be an oppositional uprising. It is going to be a respectful campaign. I want to demonstrate to the country how we should all be campaigning, which is not to divide and to be divisive, to be mean-spirited, to be aggressive, to undercut. We should be lifting the country with our campaigns. I run campaigns of joy. I've succeeded. I flipped a district that had been Republican for 60 years. I beat a 5-term incumbent who had won by 14 points. I beat him by 12, and I won my last election by 20. Not by being mean, aggressive, rude, lying, like so many do right now. I did it just the opposite. I listen. I engage voters of all perspectives, and I do it in a joyful manner that I think is contagious in a country that really needs more of it, and that is how I run campaigns. Now, the other news is I don't have a lot of name recognition. I know that. In politics, that's not such a bad thing because as I introduce myself to people, if they like what they hear, if they feel inspired by what I will bring to the White House, they'll spread the word for me. And I believe that's exactly what we're on a mission to do right now. It's not an easy task. It's a steep slope, but it's one that I think is the most important of my lifetime. And if we do it well, I have great confidence that we'll succeed and fundamentally change executive leadership in the United States of America. We sure need it.
So I want to just press you a little bit on that point. I mean, in your mind, what really are some core issues that you think you can bring to voters that you can say, this is what you'll get from me that maybe you won't get from the current president? Or is it just the idea that you believe you have a better chance of beating Donald Trump?
Well, let's start with the first and the latter, which is a better chance of beating Donald Trump. I do believe as I hit the campaign trail, people get to know me. They recognize what I stand for and who I am. I do believe that to be the case. That's the primary reason. From a policy perspective, I think the president has done a good job. He's been serving in Washington for 50 years. I was 3 years old when he became a U.S. Senator. And Washington has a way of encapsulating and protecting those who are supposed to be representing and leading from the very people who want to be led by principled people of good character. I'm a business person. That's my background. I know how to build organizations. I know how to hold people to account. Our government is not run the way it needs to. We don't employ zero-based budgeting, which means that we just add more money every year to every program, every agency. We don't have presidential cabinets comprised of people with great management experience. I'm someone who, I don't care if you have a D or R at the end of your name, if you're a person of character, competency, and principle, you'll have a place in my cabinet. We have to fundamentally, I think, reconstruct our federal budget. We're spending $1 trillion a year on national defense. While people literally are homeless, starving, dying of overdoses, we have no mental health system. We have the highest cost of healthcare in the entire world. We have gun violence that is not seen in any developed nation anywhere around the globe. And I'm tired of administrations, Democratic and Republican, talking the talk and never walking the walk. I'm also the most bipartisan member of Congress, which is my special sauce. I know how to work with everybody. I solicit ideas from both sides. And I believe America might be ready for a president who makes that his core principle and priority, is to literally governing with both sides. Because if we do so, we might absolutely change this nauseating culture of division, stop fighting each other, and start fighting for America. That is my mission.
Well, now you're speaking my language, a man after my own heart. To piggyback off that a little bit, I mean, what's an issue you think right now a President Dean Phillips could bring Republicans and Democrats together on? I mean, I think a lot of Americans are watching the current state of Congress and the country, and it's probably hard to imagine areas where we can really come together and pass legislation that has broad bipartisan support. So what's something that you imagine during your presidency you could bring to fruition?
Oh, I got a lot of ideas. Let's start with affordability. It's the issue I hear every day from everybody I speak with. Life is simply too expensive. People wonder, why are corporations being afforded better tax treatment than individuals, but than working families? In Minnesota, my home state, there's no tax on clothing and on food, because that is a way to ensure that those at the lowest end of the socioeconomic spectrum have a little bit more in their pockets. We have to restore the child tax credit, I believe. We have to focus, and there are ways to focus on energy prices in a way that's much more, I think, intentional, working with our allies around the world. But affordability has to be job one. Let me talk about the border and chaos at the border. That's an area where Democrats and Republicans have to work together, both on border security, a conservative principle right now, of course. By the way, it should be a comprehensive principle, national security. From a Democratic perspective, the humanity of immigration policy. We need to better welcome migrants to the United States. We have a need for them economically and otherwise. And we should also go upstream and work together to ensure that we invest our foreign aid dollars in ways that actually attack the problems that are coming to our border. If we only address the problem once it gets to the border, we've already lost. We should be investing in the countries of origin of the migrants, keep them safe, secure, invest in opportunity, so we reduce the waves of people feeling that they have no choice but to leave. That's another area, and I think a really important one. Gun violence prevention. I am so sick of the BS on both sides, getting nothing done as we sit and watch massacres like we just did in Maine, 18 people killed again. The answer is not just taking guns from people. I don't think in this country that is feasible. I don't think it's possible. And I don't think it's reasonable. Republicans call for mental health investment. You know what? We need it. We don't have a mental health system. I don't see why Democrats and Republicans cannot commit right now to invest in a mental and emotional health system, make it a national priority, resource it appropriately. It is needed not just to reduce gun violence, which it will. It's needed because our country is falling apart at the seams with diseases of despair. These are basically populist, basic, simple challenges that have solutions that are completely on the table if we change this culture of nonsense that is permeating our Congress and our country. And that's why I say I love my Republican colleagues. I want to work with them. I want to populate agencies with them so that we embed the very best and brightest in our government, and then half of the country, every 4 years, half of the country feels they do not have a voice in our federal government administration. We've got to change that, and I will.
So I know there are going to be a lot of strong reactions to your decision to run. I can't imagine the things that you're reading and hearing right now. But one of the criticisms that I'd be curious to hear you respond to is just the experience criticism. I mean, in this day and age, a lot of people throw their hat into presidential races, but you're a three-term congressman, like you mentioned. You came into office kind of in the wake of the President Trump election. Why should we trust somebody who's, just showed up in the recent history of our country to Congress with the most important, powerful, high-ranking job there is?
Sure. Well, I understand people don't yet know my name and they don't yet know what I've done. And my career is quite diverse and a lot of experience. I built businesses, I've built organizations, I've run enterprises. I served as the chairman of the board of the largest health system in Minnesota. I was a regent at a university. I've been a member of Congress now for over 5 years. I understand leadership, I understand legislation. And frankly, if you look at my career and my, if you will, my resume, it's actually quite more diverse than our last 3 presidents. Joe Biden has only served in government since he was in his late 20s. Donald Trump, only in business. Barack Obama was a young senator who had no enterprise experience, no executive experience, and no governance experience until being a U.S. Senator coming from the state legislature in Illinois. That's the beautiful part of America. Once you get to know somebody, once you understand their background, I think people will see that I'm actually better prepared to do this job than many people who aspire to the position, who've spent their entire career aspiring to be president and serving in public office. That is actually part of the problem. If you don't have a life of diversity and background, I think that's a problem. I've traveled the world. I've been to 49 of 50 states. I started my career in sales. When you start in sales, you listen. And I think that's the core responsibility of public service.
I got to ask, what's the one state you haven't been to?
Oklahoma.
Oh, all right,
Like you
we're going to
spell it,
knock that off.
Oklahoma.
I love it. All right, I know you got a jam-packed schedule. A couple quick questions before you get out of here. One of them is, I've noticed in some of the media you've done, some of the interviews you've done, you've said that you were simply saying the quiet part out loud. You said it at the top of this interview that you're speaking to something you hear Democrats say privately that they're not saying publicly. What is it that you are hearing from your colleagues that you feel like people don't have the courage to say publicly right now?
I'm hearing the same. I know as a fact, that the people closest to the president, those serving in the Congress, in the administration, all have the same concerns for exactly the same reasons. You can listen to James Carville right now. You can listen to Dave Wasserman. You can read David Ignatius's column from the Washington Post of a few weeks ago. They're also saying the quiet part out loud. There are grave concerns about the president's ability to continue in this position in an effective manner that would be for another 5 years, 5.5 years, that would make him 86 years old at the end of his next term. And by the way, Donald Trump he's also in that same category. But the concern is that the president will lose. The concern is that he's a human being. I'm not going to focus on age because that's not what this is about, but we will all make our assessments on the capacities of presidential candidates, and that's how this system is supposed to work. Those who are afraid of having a choice, those who are afraid of having the freedom to assess another candidate in a system designed to do so, which is the primary system. I'm not running as an independent candidate. That would be tragic. Cornel West, Robert Kennedy, other initiatives that could run as third-party candidates, those people are the ones that we should be concerned about. We should be celebrating alternatives at a time where the risk is so substantial. They all know it. And I would encourage people listening, watching to this interview right now, listen to James Carville, go read Dave Wasserman, read David Ignatius's column. These are people who get it. They've been doing this a long time. They know the risk. And the fact of the matter, let me say one more thing, maybe in closing. Go look at Matt Gaetz's tweet yesterday, in which he said that Donald Trump would have a much more difficult time beating me than Joe Biden. That's Matt Gaetz, Donald Trump's biggest, most supportive surrogate. Maybe he knows more than Democrats are leading on to right now.
All right, one last thing before you get out of here. Obviously, I think the biggest, most overwhelming response, and the one that we see coming a little bit from the Biden campaign, in the early days of you launching this candidacy, is just that kind of a shrug, like this guy doesn't have a shot to win. You mentioned the name recognition. You guys, from what I've read, have a bit of an interesting idea about how you might get some momentum in this election, which is capitalizing on a tactical error the Biden administration has made by not going to New Hampshire first. Can you talk a little bit about, in your mind, best case scenario, what do the next few months look like? I mean, how do you make this race competitive running against a sitting president, which just gives him the huge advantage of incumbency?
And he has that huge advantage, not because of his potential in the next election. He has that huge advantage simply because he's already in the office. And the good news in America is that the Democratic National Committee, the political machines, they do not determine the outcomes of elections. Thank goodness. People do. And if people get out and vote in primaries, it's amazing what can change. And I would call on the exhausted majority, of whom I'm one, to get out and vote in primaries. That's what matters. It's not the Democratic National Committee that will make that decision. Our strategy is pretty simple. New Hampshire, which has a 103-year-old tradition of being the first in the nation primary, was disenfranchised by the president and by the Democratic National Committee. Primarily, I believe, because the president lost New Hampshire. I think he came in 4th or 5th place in 2020. Same thing in Iowa. So he disenfranchised Iowa and New Hampshire. They moved it to South Carolina as the first in the nation. The message was because we need a more diverse start to the beginning of the primaries. And I understand that. I'll be in South Carolina. I can't wait to. But to take away this extraordinary culture in the first in the nation primary, a state that has made it their ethos to assess candidates for the first time, where they take it really seriously, I think it's a great opportunity. I intend to win New Hampshire. That might demonstrate to the country that there's an option. There's a principled option, someone of character and competency, the ability to bring us to the future and do it in a way that I think the country needs more than ever. And if I have that opportunity to make my case, if people take a moment to get to know me, at least then they'll have a choice. Right now, 80% of the country wants neither Donald Trump nor Joe Biden in the next election. They do not want a repeat of 2020. That's my message. Let's move to the future and let's do it now. And I'd love to meet everybody. And my message is everyone's invited.
All right, Representative Dean Phillips, thank you so much for the time. I know you're running around like crazy today. Good luck with the early days of the launch, and we'll be watching closely. Let's keep in touch.
Hey, Isaac, thanks so much. And anybody wants to learn more, go to dean24.com. Learn about me. Come meet me on the trail, and I'd love to say hello.
Appreciate it.